morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. Welcome to the Fayetteville Public Library. My name is Joel Bunch. I'm a reference librarian. I want to welcome Tyler Simpson. He's going to be with us today. He's from Pack Route Outdoor Center. He's going to be your guide today, and he's going to go over a variety of different topics to prepare you for all things backpacking. Whether it's your first time, your 50th in the great outdoors, there's something here for everybody. So get ready. Have any questions, feel free. After today's program, if you wouldn't mind, there are feedback forms on that little cart in the back. If you let us know what you thought about today's program, and if you have ideas of programs of this nature you'd like to see in the future, please let us know. I read every one of these, so appreciate your consideration in those. There's a little box in the back where you'll put that. And now, if you'll please join me in welcoming Tyler Simpson.
All right. Oh, man. Nice and loud. Cool. So we're all here because we want to make the most out of our time in the woods, right? In our modern day and age, we don't get as much time in the woods maybe as we want, right? So that time that we have is precious, right? And I really want to equip you guys with all the tools to squeeze the most that you can out of it, right? Because most of us are going out for a weekend, maybe a week at a time if we get lucky. So in our modern society, it's the way it is. So today, you're going to have everything that you need to get the most out of it. The first thing that I want to talk about before I really get into it, though, is leave no trace, the principles of leave no trace. Old Sasquatch here, he's very good at leave no trace. Haven't seen a trace of him yet. Is anybody familiar with Leave No Trace? Have heard of it, the organization? Perfect. If I'll just go over the big stuff then so we can get into the meat of it, right? The big things in Leave No Trace, right, are that you want to be staying on your designated trail, packing out all your trash, like toileting well in the woods, right, practicing good hygiene. We can get all into that at a later point. And then practicing good fire etiquette, right? You can, venture off trail if you want, but just make sure that your presence is light, I wouldn't go hacking down a bunch of trees to get off trail to go see something, but, kind of use your common sense, you know what I mean? If you think that there is going to be a serious repercussion, if there's going to be erosion, if there's going to be any sort of detriment to the environment, maybe think about it before you do it, and that means building rock cairns in a riverbed, that means marking a tree with a knife, that means piling up rocks around for a firing, right? So all those are ways that we leave traces in the wilderness, right? And we want the wilderness to remain wild, exactly that, right? So look, try not to touch. If you have to touch, put it back. That's kind of the basics of that. Trash is a big deal when you're backpacking, right? So humans produce trash. That's kind of what we do. That's what we're good at as a species, right? But there are ways that we can minimize that and mitigate that. So I always carry a little trash bag with me, pack out, things like your banana peels, your orange peels, even that, it takes, years for an orange peel to decompose in the wild. So even stuff like that you might not think about, you think is organic. It might not be natural in the ecosystem that you're in or endemic to the ecosystem that you're in. So you want to make sure and you pack that out as well. Some places, depending on where you are in the country or out of the country, their laws and rules and regulations may differ, right? So you might need something called a wag bag. Has anybody heard of a wag bag? Okay, a wag bag is a tool that you use to pack out your excrement, right? There are some really sensitive ecosystems that exist out there, some really protected place, national parks, stuff like that, where you do need to pack out your excrement, all that stuff. So make sure you are checking local regulations, laws, stuff like that. We'll talk about trail toileting when we get to trail hygiene, but I do want to talk a little bit about fire etiquette in terms of leave no trace. Fires are pretty harsh on the environment, right? But big things we can do to mitigate that are using a designated fire ring, only using as much fire as you need, and really only using fire when absolutely necessary. When you're backpacking, we've come a really long way as far as gear is concerned, and there's a lot of ways that you can cook and heat up your meals without having to have a fire, introducing all that to the ecosystem. Yeah. Anybody have questions about leave no trace before we move on? Cool. All right, a huge, huge, huge part of backpacking and having success backpacking. Hey, how you doing? Welcome to the presentation. Hey, how's it? So a big critical part about this is, fitting your pack and your boots, right? You're going to be in this pack, you're going to be in these boots all day long. And depending on what you're doing, it could be 5 miles, 10 miles, 15 miles, right? And if it's not a good fit, you're going to be uncomfortable, right? I've had so many experiences early on in my backpacking career where I just, crushed my feet, like really destroyed my hips because I didn't have a good fit on my pack or my boots, right? Packs are super customizable. There is just a multitude of just styles of packs, right? So it's really worth doing a little bit of research before you invest in one because it can be an expensive part of your kit. So backpacks aren't necessarily a universal fit, right? They come in all different shapes and sizes, right? We do custom pack fitting at the Pack Rat, so if you're ever in doubt, you can come to the store and we'll help you out. We'd love to get people equipped out there. But the main thing about fitting a pack is that you want the majority of your weight on your hips, right? Has anybody backpacked familiar with this? All right, excellent, cool. So that is going to keep you centered. It's going to keep your center of gravity where it needs to be, right there, kind of on the bony part of your hip there, right? So your backpack should work without being clamped in all the way. But when you get that sternum strap, oh, mine's clipped backwards, let's go, bingo. You see there shouldn't be any gap. It should be like a full harness, but you should still have room to breathe, right? You shouldn't have anything rubbing or anything that's going to cause friction, right? Because that little rub, you get some grit down in there. Eventually it can blister up your hip, stuff like that. If you're going, 10, 11, 12 days on the trail, eventually that adds up quick. But even for a weekend, man, it can really wreck you. And you don't want to be uncomfortable in the woods. That's one more thing to worry about. So pack fit is critical. They're super adjustable. I usually spend a whole night before my trip just fiddling with all the little nooks and jobs on the pack, trying to get it ready. So that's pack fitting, the short version. If you want to come to the store someday and get a pack fit, we can go through the whole deal, but it takes about an hour or so for that. The next thing is boots. Boots are a huge piece of backpacking, right? You're going to put some miles on those boots, so it's important for them to be comfortable, right? It's important for them to fit your foot well. And you're like, Tyler, a boot's a boot. What are you talking about? There's no way. But there's a lot of nuance in backpacking boots, right? Boots really vary in stiffness. Boots vary in height. Boots vary in outsole. So you really need to match those boots to what you're doing. And if you're just starting out for a weekender, I think it's better to go with a softer boot, something that's going to be comfortable on your foot, something that's not going to be so offensive. Some of the harder boots, stiffer boots, they're made for carrying really, really heavy loads, right? And those are great, if you're going to be, packing out an elk in Idaho, or if you're going to be packing in a base camp, you're going on an expedition. But if you're just doing a weekend backpacking trip, man, the comfiest boot, that's going to be the boot for you. Yeah. Question about any of this? Yeah, what's up?
Do y'all have barefoot options for backpacking boots?
So we've got some minimalist boots. So there's a few good options on the market right now. So Ultra has some, Topo Athletics has some, but the true barefoot boots, we don't stock any of them. It's kind of a niche thing. I haven't experimented, researched enough to know if they're truly good for you, your joints and everything yet. But I wear barefoot shoes quite often. I love it. I don't trust it yet 100% to sell them at the store. But maybe one day. Maybe one day. I'm not saying don't hike in the barefoot shoes. If that's what's worked for you, then.
Now the closed toe is uncomfortable after so long with the barefoot.
You bet. You bet. Yeah, having that wide splay, it's really nice. Just being able to wiggle your toes in your boots a little bit goes a long way. Any other questions about? Yeah, what's up?
What about trail
Trail runners? Okay, I think trail runners are awesome for backpacking. Whenever I'm doing a weekender, I'll usually be in my trail runners, in my lows. I try, if my pack weight is, hovering around 30 pounds or less, that's when I'll wear my trail runners. If I go over 30 pounds or if I'm on like pretty aggressive terrain, then I try not to wear them. I try to wear something with a little bit of ankle support. But yeah, I mean, if you've got like rock solid joints and like you're very used to it, then like you can probably push, 40, 45 pounds with them. That'd be fine. Yeah. Other questions? Sweet. All right, pack organization. This is when it gets like techie nerdy, right? So it's not just the stuff that you carry that's important in your backpack, it's how you carry the stuff in your backpack, right? So the heaviest items in your pack, it should be really low and like centered on your back, right? Think like all the heaviest stuff riding on your spine right there, right? That's gonna keep all the weight kind of where you want to carry that load and how your backpacks fit. It's going to push that down into your hips, right? So all that weight is going to be sitting right there on your hips. If you've got your heavy items on the outside, you're going to be falling backwards, you're going to be tripping, especially if you're going uphill or downhill. That's where it's going to get cumbersome. And beyond that, it's just going to put excess strain, on your core, on your auxiliary muscles, and you're not going to be as efficient, right? And when you are going long distances and when you're carrying extra load, you want to be as efficient as possible, right? So yes, you want to use the compression straps on the outside of your pack for sure. You want this pack to be like really rigged up as tight as possible. I'll shake it and that pack's really not moving, right? You want to avoid the flop, right, is what we call it. Because when you're taking a step and you've got the flop, then it's going to shift that weight, shapoom, 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 and then you're going to be working, kind of trying to get back in balance. So you want to keep it really, really tight. And the way that you pack it, you want to have really quick access to all your necessary items. Your rain fly, your first aid kit, your toileting items. If you have any like important meds, like EpiPen or inhaler, stuff like that, you want quick access to it. Snacks, big one. I love having snacks on like side pocket, stuff like that. Just like be thoughtful about it. Like take the extra time before you go on your trip and really like set up your pack thoughtfully. And when you're in the backcountry, before you leave before you leave for a day of hiking, and when you're setting up shop at your camp, take the time to organize your backpack. There's not much stuff that you have to worry about. It's not like you have your entire house with you, right? So doing a little bit of housekeeping in the backpack's worth it. Like 10, 15 minutes of organization can make a huge difference in your comfort for your day when you're hiking, 5, 10 hours. But that's kind of the quick and dirty of it. We'll open up the pack, and if you guys want to jump up, come around and get closer. So now we're just going to dump the pack. This is where like the majority of the presentation is going to be. So we will click on over. We'll talk a little bit about gear selection. I've got a checklist for everyone. Y'all can keep these, use these as a reference. Whenever you are going out on a trip. And note, this is my list. This is not everybody's list. Your list might be very different from mine, but this is just an example that you guys can check out. Yeah, absolutely. There you go. There you go. Oh, no worries. There you go. All right, note one thing under shelter system. It says tent, tarp, and hammock. You just need one of those. You don't need all 3 shelters, right? So pick one, whichever is your favorite. I'll talk about this stuff a little bit, and then we'll blow the pack up. We'll just do like a full shakedown, kind of how we would for a trip, right? So this is kind of what we would do. You'd get your party together. Everybody would bring their packs, throw them on the ground, blow them up, unpack everything, make 100% sure that you have what you need. So that is the shakedown, essentially.
How come you suggest a hammock and tarp?
A hammock and a tarp. Sometimes it rains, so if you're in that hammock and it's raining, then you're exposed, right? So you always want to have shelter overhead, no matter what shelter system you're in, like a bivy bag, a tent, tarp shelter, whatever it is. Always have shelter overhead for sure. So that gear shakedown with your entire party is cool, because if you're traveling with a group of multiple people, you can split gear, right? If you're splitting a tent with folks, you can share that amongst yourselves. If you are sharing cooking equipment, one person can carry the pot, one person can carry the stove, one person can carry a pretty extensive med kit, while the other person can carry an IFAC, individual first aid kit. So there's a lot of options for efficiency there when you are building like a party like gear kit. And another thing, everybody has a different budget, right? Backpacking does not have to be the most expensive thing in the world, right? I mean, we all like nice things, and there's tons of really, really nice gear out there, but you don't have to break the bank to go backpacking, right? There's a lot of like really creative options for gear, and there's a lot of really good options for budget gear that we can talk about. I've got a bunch of it in my backpack today to show you guys. And we also do rental gear at the Pack Rat. So if you are just kind of dipping your toes into backpacking, if you really don't know if this is going to be for you, if you just want to try it out, you can always come by and rent. So we rent the big three, right? Those are going to be the three most expensive pieces of your backpacking kit. That's going to be your pack itself. That is going to be your sleeping bag and your sleeping pad, your sleep system, and your shelter system, right? So we have some tents for rent. Those are going to be the heaviest items too. So generally, the more you spend on those items, the lighter they get. But they can get crazy expensive. So I would not recommend, unless you really, really want to, going out and buying like the wildest pack setup. I've seen some folks with like $10,000 backpacks. You don't need it. I promise. You really don't need it. But yeah, exactly. Man, it don't take that much to go have fun in the woods. I promise you. Any questions before we blow up the backpack? Do a little pack dump? Cool. All right. So this pack is it's a hunting pack. It's an alpine hunting pack. It has a like load-bearing shelf on it so that I can actually pull the pack out and pack meat in. So it's big, like for big game hunting primarily, but I like it just because it's really efficient. It's really modular. If I want to overload it, then I can put a really big dry bag in between there, and I can like drop it off at my base camp, and then I can have it just as a day pack. So I bought this pack just because it does everything, not necessarily because I only want it for like big alpine hunting stuff.
Can you talk about how much that pack weighs empty?
Yes. So this pack is very heavy, empty. It is. So when it is unloaded, it comes in at like 4.5 pounds, which is pretty heavy for a backpack, right? I mean, they'll get backpacks down sub 2 pounds now. It's pretty wild. Ultralighters, folks who are doing like really long trails, like the Pacific Crest Trail or the Appalachian Trail, I mean, their base weight before food and water, some folks are getting down to 12 pounds, which is super, super light. And their backpacks are made of a material called Dyneema. Have you heard of Dyneema? Anybody? It's like a space fabric. It's wild. It's really, really strong, but it's super lightweight. It's very expensive. And yeah, their backpacks it's essentially like a drawstring bag with straps on it, but very minimalist. But this pack, for me, does everything I need it to, and I'm willing to carry the extra weight on the pack because I tend to pack a little bit lighter. There's kind of like a saying in the outdoor world, like, the more you know, the less you carry. Morris Konsky said that back in the day, and it really is true. When I first started, I brought all sorts of stuff backpacking. I brought like pillows and thermocells and extra batteries for my phone and like solar panels and like all sorts of ridiculous stuff, but I don't know. Trial and error. You figure out what you need and what you don't need, for sure. So, top of the pack. What I like to have on hand, like super, super quick, are wipes and a trowel. You never know when it's time. So, we always have it. And I like to have a notebook handy, always, right? So in here is usually where I keep all my like navigation tools, right? So I'll have my map in here, I have my compass, I'll have any sort of like trail information on here, you know, little guides, whatever I'm doing. I'll write down like birds I see, places I'd like to come back, like specific UTM coordinates of, you know, places that I found interesting that I'd like to show, you know, my wife or my family, something like that. It's just nice to have a way to record some stuff like that. I think it's pretty crucial to every kit, right? So that's all I keep in the top, in the brain of the pack. And then we'll blow it up. And I'll let you kind of see it before we go through everything. I have my pack set up so that, you know, my heaviest item is going to be my food, right? That's going to be right there in the center of the pack. Like right in the small of my back, just right there. My sleep system's going to be just under it, my sleeping bag. I've got some other heavy tools up here. Quick access to water up there. Got my rain gear on the side. First aid kit, just right on the side. So I've got all my necessary items, like really quick, easy access. I prefer to run as much gear as I can internal in the bag as possible. You know, a lot of people like to run their water bottles outside of their backpack, and that's awesome. If I can help it, I don't have anything on the outside. It's easy for stuff to get like snagged if you're going through, but water bottles are like generally the exception for me. I'll carry a water bottle on the outside of my backpack or any like, you know, essential gear for whatever I'm doing, tripod, or something if I'm shooting photography, anything like that. But if it's inside the pack, it's really hard for it to get lost. You know, that's the deal. And then there's also the consideration of like color, right? I have some low vis gear and I have some high vis gear, right? Sometimes you really, really want to be seen, but sometimes you kind of want to disappear, get away to places and not be bothered by folks. Sometimes that's why people go outside. So there's a good mixture of both in here. Up top, sun hat, necessary item, 100%. Sun protection is huge when you are outside. You definitely want to have sun protection, sunscreen. I always wear long sleeves, even if it's the middle of summer. You know, lightweight, of course, but I want to have as much sun protection as possible because you can really cook and do some damage to your skin if you're outside all day. This is a shamag. This is just like a big, giant bandana, right? Like a super-sized scarf. Really, you are limited by your own creativity with something like this. You can do all sorts of stuff with a shamag. When I am considering items for my kit, I will try to make sure that I have at least 3 uses for everything I put in my bag, right? Because I'm going to be carrying it around all day. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to have stuff in there that's just superfluous. So this is something that is huge. You know, it's a thermoregulation tool. You can wrap it around your neck, you know, on a cold night. You can wear it as sun protection. You can use it as a pre-filter to filter water. You can use it to carry firewood. You can use it just as a way to kneel a little bit more comfortable if you're starting a fire, doing a little work. There's a million uses for one of these, and it's a super cheap tool that you can put in your toolbox. So I would really recommend somebody who does not have one of these, pick one up. Any big bolt of cloth will do. But folks have been using these for a long, long time, thousands and thousands and thousands of years. This is a tool bag. I like to keep all my tools together so that they're not like running around all in my bag. Super, super basic tool set. My mentality on tools is that I want to have tools that can make tools. I don't carry like tent stakes or stuff like that because they're easy enough to just whip out. You can get any little down tree and carve it up. I'll show you what we do have. Something that is super necessary is a headlamp, right? I always like one that has red light. Red light does not upset your night vision in the night. So if you are traveling at night and you want to have like really good awareness of your surroundings, you can use that red light instead of the white light, and it's not going to disrupt the cones in your eyes as bad. And it's also a little bit harder to detect, right? So if you're trying to go somewhere and you're not trying to leave like a big impact with light pollution, then red light's a good option. Something else that I always have, if I have a headlamp, is spare batteries. Because, dude, it stinks being out in the dark in the middle of the woods. It's not that fun. It's okay, you can do it, but contingencies are important, right? This does one thing in the woods, but it's worth having, right? I can justify that. Keep that in this little bag. It's high-vis itself, so if I drop it, it's easy to find, right? In here, we got a little fire kit, right? Always have a way to start a fire if you're going in the backcountry, right? Even if you don't plan on having a fire, if you're camping somewhere where fires are banned, bring a way to start a fire anyway, right? It's better to have it and not need it than to do the inverse, right? So in here, super simple tools. I got some matches, and I have wrapped some like beeswax cordage around it. So this is natural cordage. This is some hemp cordage. It burns for a really, really long time. It's really efficient, and it doesn't take up too much space. So I think it's worth it. A little ferrocerium rod. Has anybody seen one of these before? So a ferrocerium rod is, so this ferrocerium is also inside a Bic lighter, right? There's a tiny little piece of this in your Bic lighter, and that's what's going to ignite the fuel in it, right? So this just makes sparks. So you can run the back of your knife down it, and it'll just shower sparks. I would love to do it for you guys, but we're in the library, and I don't think they would appreciate me, setting it on fire. If you take one of our firecraft classes, we can show you at the Pack Rat, but we won't get to it today.
Had a fire scare this year?
Ooh, that's no good. So those are some options, and then I take some little man-made fire starters. You can buy these, you can make these yourself. Something that I've found to be really, really effective when making these, I'll take those makeup remover pads, the like circular patches, and I will spray some like Zippo lighter fluid on them, dunk them in wax, right? Then they're waterproof. It's super cheap, way cheaper than buying stuff like this, and they're super, super effective. So that's a really good way to have a little fire contingency. If you need a fire fast in the woods, like you need a fire fast. Yes. We won't get into all that today. Yeah, been there. Little hank of cordage. Just like the Shamag, you know, you're limited by your creativity with this. You know, whether it's gear repair, tying yourself another shoelace, you know, doing a bow drill, tying a little toggle, whatever you want to do. Cordage, it's good to have. A compass, huge, huge. If you are not super confident in your navigational skills before going backpacking, I would really highly recommend taking some sort of navigation class or going with somebody who is an experienced navigator. You know, we have all sorts of technology now that helps us navigate. You know, we've got our phones in our pockets. We've got like GPS units and all that. But electronics fail. It happens, and it's always just a good skill to know, right? So training is huge on these. Don't let that be a deterrent, though. There's plenty of trails that are super, super accessible that, you know, very like novice level navigators can do just fine. I like to have a mirror on my compass, right? This is great for signaling, right? If you are in a situation where you need to be seen, you know, you can aim it, signal up at folks far away from you. You can also use this, you know, first aid applications. You know, if you're checking yourself for ticks, you know, you can check all over yourself for ticks, and you definitely want to be checking yourself for ticks in Arkansas. It's a big deal. You know, if you got something in your teeth, something in your eye, it's just really nice to have a mirror out there. Mine has a little magnifier too. You can start fires with it. It's fun. It's fun. The kids like that one. A knife. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just whatever knife you have will do just fine. As long as it's sharp, as long as you're safe with it, it's all that you need. My wife got me this one for our first Valentine's Day ever, and that's why I carry this one. I have a huge collection of knives, but this is the one that I carry because I like it. It's small, it's compact. You don't need like a machete or like a big old knife. You can carry one if you want to, but it's heavy. Just remember that. I like to have a fixed blade knife, full tang, because it's strong, you know, a pocket knife. It's got a lot of moving parts, right? So it can break. You got the potential of a gear failure there, but use what you're comfortable with, right? This tool, I would argue, is the most important thing in the backpack, right? If I was going to go with a backpack with no gear in it and just one thing, this would be it. You can make pretty much everything you need in the woods with a knife if you know what you're doing. I've got a little sharpening stone on mine, so if I'm out for a long time, then I can put an edge back on it. Little saw, not necessary. This is like one of the luxury items that I like to carry when I'm in the backcountry. So a little saw is useful for all sorts of stuff. You can process firewood with it. You can make tools. I use it mostly to make stakes. You know, if I am doing like a tarp shelter or something like that. But it's a really fast way to process wood, and it is way lighter than carrying like a hatchet or an axe or something like that. You know, it's very energy efficient. You know, it doesn't take much energy to cut with a saw, but it takes a lot of energy for you to cut with an axe. So you hear me say that a lot during the presentation: efficiency, 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 right? Because you can only carry so many calories in your pack, and you're going to be expending a lot of calories. So if you're not getting calories from the landscape, maybe one day y'all get there. That'd be really exciting. You know, you could do some foraging, hunting, but it takes a while to get there. Yeah, caloric efficiency, big deal. That's all the tools. Questions about tools or anything else that we've talked about so far? Yeah.
When you hunting, where do you put the meat? You said it in your pack. There's a place.
Yeah, so I can show you. Let me zip it up here. So this pack has a shelf. So what I'll do is I'll unclip this off the back here. It's a little involved, but we'll get there. And this whole deal is going to slide off. Oh, it's on there pretty tight. Just like so. So I'll pack it right in there. I've got a meat bag, right? So that'll keep all the like flies, anything like that off of it. And then I'll put it in between my gear and in my back, right? Because that's going to be super, super heavy, right? The elk quarter is 100 pounds, you know? So that's what you're going to want directly against your back. So that'll ride just in there. And usually when I'm packing, I'm just packing it to the truck. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So, yeah, if you're hunting small game or anything like that, I'll generally just like hang it off the outside of the pack. So like rabbits or birds, anything like that. Yeah, I'll string them up on the outside of the pack. Mm-hmm. Awesome question. Very fun. Any other questions?
What did you say you have wrapped around the matches?
Ooh, this. So this, it's like a wick, like a super long candle wick. It's like hemp cord that's treated with beeswax. It's like super, super efficient. So you can light this with like a match or with the ferro rod or the lighter, and it has like a really long burn time. So rather than using like all the fuel in my lighter, I'll use this, right? So that preserves the fuel in my lighter.
You like that and use that to
Exactly. Yeah. Just like it essentially turns it into like a match, right? So just there it is. Mm-hmm.
I can just burn it like right on there.
Yep. So I will unwrap it a little bit. I can show you. Twist it up, and there it is. You light it. Start your fire. You have a little open flame with it.
Do you have that at Pack Rat?
Yes, we do have some at Pack Rat if it's still in stock. I've been selling a bunch of it.
So do you use that in addition to the little things you said you use makeup?
Which one? Oh yeah, these.
Do you use both of them at the same time?
You can. I tend to just use these in emergency, right? So I don't use these often. But I'll use these when it's like, say I just did a river crossing in cold weather, right? And I need to get my core body temperature up, and I need a fire really, really fast. That's when I'll pull something like this out. You know, and I'll talk to the folks in my party. I'll be like, hey, like, I need you to get some little sticks. You need to get some medium sticks. You need to get some big sticks. Like, I'll get this started and I'll start the fire. So that way we can get it done really, really fast so we can all bring our core temp up. Yeah. But it's also good if it's wet outside, right? That's something that's really kind of frustrating when you're building fires. Like if it sprinkles or if it's like been raining for a while, it's really tough to get a fire started. So if it's like really moist conditions outside, then I'll use these as well.
And what are those called?
What are these? These are fire plugs. There's all sorts of little like emergency fire tenders. Yeah, and they're not all this size, you know. Some are in like a rope form, some look like a giant match. There's all sorts, but I like these because they're small, they're really efficient, and they're waterproof, right? They're treated with like a wax, so even if they get wet, they'll burn. You can fluff them up, stretch them out. Exactly, like a cotton ball. You got it. Other questions before we get on to more stuff in the backpack? Cool. Is everybody learning a decent amount? Are we having fun? Okay, cool. If you're ever not having fun, let me know, and we can try to make it more fun. Okay.
I do have one question.
Sure.
You mentioned that you'll have fire starting classes.
Yeah, we do. Absolutely. Yeah, those are all on the website. So if you jump on the website, go over to the events tab. That has all of our classes. We tend to slow down in the summer just because it's so hot outside, but we've got a few coming up. So we've got archery, knots, and then we should have some more intro to fire crafts in the fall. Other questions? Okay. Talk about water purification, a water purification system. This is a bottle and a purifier. We'll get into it a little bit later. I just talked about it now. We'll let it happen. So, in this bottle, there's a filter cartridge or a purifier cartridge, right? So I use this to collect dirty water, and then I will press it, purify it, and then you have clean water instantly. This is like a 100% necessary piece of kit. I never go into the woods without this. I love it. This is just one style though. This is called the Grail purifier. A lot of different companies make purifiers. There are filters as well, so be discerning when you are purchasing a water treatment option. Purifiers get a little bit more of the funk out, right? So purifiers will get chemicals and viruses, whereas filters just get microorganisms, you know, bacteria, protozoa, stuff like that. So I tend to use a purifier often, mostly because the places that I go, I don't know what the water quality is like, right? You know, there could be some dude driving a four-wheeler through a creek, you know, just up the creek with an oil spill in it, and I would never know. But this gives me a little bit of confidence. I've drank some crazy stuff out of this. I promise you, it works. It's awesome. I filtered water that looks like chocolate milk, and it comes out clear, and it tastes great. It's amazing. It is a really, really awesome tool, and everybody before going to the woods should have some sort of water purification system, whether that is a filter, a purifier, chemical treatment, anything like that. You can also boil your water, you know, if you do have a gear failure, if that's just your preference, you're old school, that's awesome, dude, boil your water. But do something to clean your water before you drink it in the woods. You know, if you're up at like really high elevation, say you're out west, you know, you're at like 13,000 feet, there's a spring-fed, you know, little creek, I'd probably drink that water without purifying it, I'll be honest with you, but I wouldn't recommend everybody do it, so that's that.
Everyone in the party needs?
So it depends. If you plan on all staying together, then no, not necessarily. They make really excellent group filters, right? But this is something that I really recommend everybody has. If you do have a gear failure with something like this, it's really good to have a redundancy. So I like to have at least 2 in the party, right? And if I'm solo, I carry water purification tablets, chemical treatment just in case. So I have 3 ways of purifying water. I have my purifier, my chemical treatment, and then I can always boil it, right? And then there's ways to make filters as well with your shamag. So with like layers of sediment, you can do that. Yeah. Other questions?
You said that
About
was called a grill.
Grail, Grayl. And there's more affordable purifiers on the market. That's just the one that I prefer just because it's so easy. It's your purifier and your container in one. It's super efficient. I love it. I will use it forever and ever until they make something better.
How long does it last?
So the cartridges last a long time. It depends on the quality of the water that you're processing, right? So on one of my trips, I went down into like a bayou that had like really, really poor water quality. And I ran through a filter in a week, right? Because I was just filtering it was like chocolate milk. It was gnarly. But I've had other canisters, that have lasted me 6 months just because I've gotten like really clear stream water from it. It just depends. But the rule on these specific models is that if it takes longer than 30 seconds to press, it's time to change that cartridge. And then, yeah, all of them have kind of different conventions on when you need to change them. So I would just read the instructions, make sure you're really familiar with it before you start using it. Yeah, whatever system you want to use. Yep. Other questions? Cool, let's talk food. You can eat whatever you want in the woods. A lot of people eat like the pre-made dehydrated meals, the backpacking meals. Those are awesome. They're not my favorite, right? They are really great at being efficient, and we love that, but it's a dehydrated meal, man. Sometimes you want fresh food. That being said, in this pack, because this is like a really ultralight setup, I have dehydrated meals, some meal bars. We'll just dump the whole deal. Might as well. Some snacks, and some prunes, because you have to get your fiber somewhere, right? Oftentimes, I'll bring like a head of broccoli. I'll bring some oranges. Limes are really killer. Just have some citrus out on the trail. Those little packages of dehydrated seaweed. It's a really awesome way to get your greens in when you're on the trail. Yeah, all really, really good options. When I am planning, depending on like who I'm going with and what the goal of the trip is, that'll really determine what I'm carrying, right? If the goal is to put a bunch of miles on the trail, to really get in there deep, to see something really, really cool, then I'll do something like this. And I'll pack like super minimalist. This will be all of my food for the whole weekend for a 2-day trip, right? So I've got 2 dinners plus an extra one. I always bring 1 extra day's rations. You never know what's going to happen. So always bring an extra day. I have 2 breakfasts. It doesn't look like much, but there is a ton of good stuff in these Pro Bars, right? 8 grams of protein, tons of calories. I think it's, 400 calories per bar. So that's a whole meal in itself. Super efficient, packs in nothing. You can put it in your pocket. 2 breakfasts, 2 lunch, a couple snacks, and then a bunch of prunes. And that'll get me through the weekend. If I'm going with my wife, I bring real food, right? I want to make sure that she has fun. Not everybody has fun eating dehydrated meals. But you can make, your own dehydrated meals. These can be a little bit expensive. You know what I mean? Oftentimes I'll make like a ramen bomb, ramen, mashed potatoes, and Spam. It's gnarly, but it's calorically dense, and it's efficient, and it's cheap, is what it is. Like those bagged salads, like a bagged salad on the trail is like magnificent, man. After you've been eating stuff like this for a couple of days, it's a game changer. It's really, really nice. Just make sure whatever you're packing in is not getting spoiled, right? And make sure, if you are packing in stuff like, bananas, oranges, apples, stuff like that, it's not getting smashed down in your pack, ruining your gear, and smearing around and smelling gnarly. We'll talk bear bags in a little while as well. That's what the cordage is for. It's for hanging a bear bag. Long spoon. I like a long spoon because it gets all the way to the bottom of the bag without having to get your fingers in the bag and getting all nasty. Pro tip: get the long spoon. It's the way. And this is my stove. This is my cook system. So this is going to be making all of my food while I'm out backpacking. Inside the cook system, we got a titanium pot. There's all sorts of metal alloys you can use. You can use titanium, steel. Some folks use aluminum. I like to stick to titanium and steel. They all have their advantages, though, and disadvantages. Titanium is much lighter weight, but it doesn't do so well over an open fire. It's really great for boiling stuff in, but it doesn't retain as much heat as stainless steel. So if you are going to be cooking solid foods, stuff like that, you are going to want a stainless steel cook set. I've got some isobutane fuel in here. This will be what powers my stove. So in here we have a tiny little canister stove. Itty bitty little guy. Oop, come on now. There it is. So he unfolds. Ba-pow, ba-pow. It's like magic. It's really amazing. Love it. There it is. There's your stove. That's all it takes. It's a single burner, right? So think like a gas burner. If you've got a gas grill in your house, your pot will set on top of the stove, right? Your canister will hook in, and then you're good to go. You'll turn it on, you'll fire it up, you'll shoot a blue flame, and it'll boil the water, heat your food, do whatever you're doing. And that's all it takes. You don't have to build a fire, you don't have to do anything. Super awesome.
Does it screw onto?
It does screw on. I won't screw it on because I doubt they want the gases and stuff, and the fire has it in here, but that's how that works. There's all sorts of different stoves that exist. There are isobutane stoves, there's propane stoves, solid fuel stoves, alcohol stoves. Most people prefer to use the isobutane, right? It's really easy, it works at elevation, it works great over long periods of time, it doesn't evaporate out of the canister, but it does have its limitations, right? If you get to super, super high elevation, then it doesn't really work the best. And it really excels at boiling water fast. It doesn't really excel at cooking solid foods, right? So if you are cooking, solid foods, then I would recommend, having some sort of solid fuel stove, whether that's a small wood burning stove, Esbit stove, something like that. Those are pretty killer there. Cook system food questions? Right, cool. Talk about shelter next. So your shelter system, variable depending on your environment, right? Since it's the summertime, I'm going to be packing in a hammock, right? I have to. In Arkansas in the summertime, I have to sleep in a hammock, man. I have to get some airflow going across me because it is a swamp out here. Thing to know about the hammock, though, if there's no trees around, your hammock's no good, right? So you have to do a little bit of research, make sure there's plenty of trees around to hang your hammock. The thing that's tough about the hammock is that you'll lose a lot of core body temperature to that convection under you, right? So you want to run some sort of insulation. My choice of insulation is an underquilt, right? So what you do for the underquilt is you'll actually put this on the outside of the hammock, on the underside, right? Rather than putting a sleeping bag over you, you'll run it underneath the hammock, right? Because you lose a lot more heat from that wind passing through you underneath the hammock, you know? So that's why this is critical to go underneath you. Whenever it's colder, I'll run a top quilt as well, right? But in the summertime, it's nice to have a little bit of ventilation. If it does get extra cold, I'll use something like a sleeping bag liner, right? This is just a fleece black bag that I can crawl inside. It just offers me like a little bit of extra protection. It's not much. Like I said, this is for Arkansas summer months, right? Your system's going to be very different if you're going to, like, you know, Washington State in December, right? You're going to have a heavy bag, man, but that's just the way it is. I like this item. This is like a whoopee liner. If any of you were like in the military, you have family in the military, you might be familiar with this. It's like a poncho liner. It'll go underneath your poncho. So rather than bringing a jacket or a coat, I'll bring this. So on a chilly morning, I can just wrap up in this. And I can also use it as a sleeping bag, 2 for 1. The bag that it comes in makes a great pillow too. So you can just stuff all of the clothes that you're wearing down in that bag, anything that you're not going to be wearing while you're sleeping, and you have a little pillow. They make like inflatable pillows and stuff like that too, but it's one more thing to carry. Up to you. The next piece of your shelter is going to be your shelter overhead, right? And this is going to be the most important part of your shelter. If you only have one piece of shelter, it should be a shelter overhead, right? So that's going to keep you dry. That is going to keep you out of the elements, can keep you out of the sun if you are in a really hot environment. This is like a standard military issue poncho, super budget item. You can get these at the military surplus store. They're really rugged. They're ripstop material. They don't break the bank. So if I was like just starting and I had to get a shelter system, this is what I would get for sure. Kind of like the other items in the pack, I like this a lot because it's multi-use, right? It's my tarp overhead. It's my rain gear. It's my pack fly. I can use it as a ground cloth if I need to just lay on it. It does everything. Really killer system. And that's just my preferred system for the summer. You know, if I was going in the wintertime, I would bring a tent. I would bring a true sleeping bag, like a big, like down-filled sleeping bag. I'd have a sleeping pad, you know, and an actual insulated pad that would provide me a little bit more insulation, you know, so I can thermoregulate. But the inverse is also true. You know, you don't want to bring gear that you're going to burn up in the summertime because then you'll be miserable. So.
How does your tarp work to keep water out if there's like a big hood on it?
Oh, got you. So what you do is you cinch it up. It'll cinch all the way. And then what I do, twist it around a few times. And then you just tie it up. So water can't get in. Yeah. Other shelter questions? Oh, go ahead.
I see. It's got holes around the side so you can string it across.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can put it tree to tree. I generally tie something called a, my mind just went blank. Wow. This is paracord. A guy line, excuse me. There it is. Yeah. Yeah, a guy line. I'll tie a guy line up, and then you can hang all sorts of stuff from it. You know, hang your wet socks at the end of the day and change your socks, right? If you've got like a soiled T-shirt, right, hang it up. Any of your like tools or things you don't want to leave on the ground, hang it up on your guy line that the rest of your stuff's on, because if your stuff's on the ground, might not leave with you, right? Shelter questions?
What did you call that poncho?
So this is it's like a military poncho, USGI. All sorts of folks make them, yeah. So you can get them just about anywhere. You find it at the military surplus store. A lot of like outdoor retailers will have them too. Super, super versatile piece of gear, yeah.
That's the liner for it.
Yes, this is the liner. So you can actually combine these items, right? So if it's cold outside and it's just dumping raining on you, you can snap this into this, and you can have like an insulated waterproof layer. It's really nice. Sometimes too, if you know I'm in an environment and I can't set up my hammock, right? what I'll do is I'll lay my hammock flat on the ground as a ground sheet, and I will turn this into a bivy bag, right? So I'll wrap this up around this, and I'll just crawl inside it, zip it up into a sleeping bag, and sleep like that. So it's a versatile system. Another cool thing about the sleeping bag liner is that it keeps your stuff a little bit cleaner, right? Because when you are trudging around the woods all day, you're getting dirty, you're getting sweaty, there's stuff all over you, right? And you can really degrade a sleeping bag quick by introducing a lot of like dirt and stuff like that. So a sleeping bag liner helps preserve the life of your sleeping bag. It's a lot easier to clean one of these than it is to clean one of these, especially if you're in the field. So that's another thing to think about. And they're just soft. They feel a little bit more like your sheets at home. Get a better night's sleep. Shelter questions? Any more?
Sleeping bag liner.
Yep. Major key. Love it. Love it. What else we got here? Extra cordage for the guy line. Something that's critical. Extra t-shirt. You're going to sweat through it. Extra socks. Maybe 2 extra pairs of socks, depending on, you know, how hot you run, or if you're going to do a lot of river crossing, something like that. You should do everything you can to keep your feet dry as possible when you're on the trail, right? Wet feet lead to blisters. You can get trench foot. There's a lot of gnarly problems that can happen if your feet get wet and stay wet on the trail. So you want to do everything you can to keep them dry. And then a spare pair of underwear as well. Always important to have extra clothes. The last piece of gear in the bag, or 2 last pieces of gear in the bag, we got a water reservoir, right? Whenever I make camp for the night, or if I'm looking at my map, it's going to be a long way between water resupplies. I'm going to want to fill up my water bladder, right? So I'm going to keep an extra 3 liters of water on me. You don't have to fill it up all the way, but it's nice to have some sort of reservoir to keep extra water on you, whether that's, a second water bottle, a third water bottle, or something like this. Just make sure that you have a redundant way to carry water. Yeah. And then a first aid kit. Everybody's first aid needs vary. Everybody's level of first aid training varies. So make sure that you have things in your first aid kit that you need and that you're familiar with, right? If you buy a prepackaged first aid kit, blow it up just like this. Set everything out. Make sure you know exactly what everything in it does, and if you don't, learn a little bit about it, right? I keep some really basic stuff in my first aid kit. Crunching through time. Some big important pieces of that. Some towelettes, soap, huge. This Dr. Bronner soap is killer. It just takes a couple drops. You can do all sorts of stuff with it. Clean your dishes, clean yourself. It's just nice to be clean at the end of the day in the woods, right? You want to make sure that you're maintaining, sanitary body while you're in the woods. It's just as important, maybe more important out in the woods, because you can get like little cuts, scrapes, things. You don't want those to get infected, right? It's the little ones that do the most damage, right? Things to be thinking about. Sunscreen is huge. We can blow the whole thing up. We might get into that a little bit later if we've got time. But the big thing is just knowing your first aid kit, being prepared to use it if you need to. And that's the bag. That's really everything that you need to go backpacking for a weekend. It might look like, not a lot of stuff, but you don't really need all that much stuff. Questions about any of the stuff in the backpack?
Can you talk about the weight goal can you tell I'm worried about weight?
Yeah, sure.
I'm worried about weight. I'm thinking about Appalachian Trail next
Awesome.
year.
Very cool.
For 2 weeks, 100 miles, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there like some sort of magic ratio number, body weight to pack weight?
Not necessarily. So it all kind of depends on what you're comfortable with, what you're trained for, right? If you're going to do something like that, I'm going to say get that weight as light as possible, right? Osprey, they make backpacks that are like really economical for as light as they are, right? That'd be a good place to start. And then just like I said, like making sure that everything in your system does multiple things, right? And really dialing that system into you. The more you use your system, the more you get comfortable with it, the more you know what you can chuck, what you can replace. It just takes like trial and error. Everybody's so different, and so like my preferences aren't necessarily going to be your preferences. But yeah, there is no magic like number ratio. I would say for something like that, like try to keep your base weight sub 25 pounds, right? So that's going to be your backpack, all of your gear, before food and water, right? After food and water, depending on where your resupplies are, your weight could be up to 35 pounds, 40 pounds even, if it's going to be a long pack, but 25 would be like a comfortable number for a base weight. Excellent. That's awesome. I want to see pictures of that when you're done. That's really cool.
It's going to take a year to get ready for it.
Oh, yeah. Training, it's a big deal for sure. Other questions about the pack or the stuff in it?
Your food, where do you get this from?
Yeah.
These, like the pressed food.
Sure. So these are available at the Pack Rat.
Okay.
There's a shameless plug. There it is. Thanks for coming by, man. Yeah, have a good one.
Where's
So
the pack rat?
the Pack Rat's over on Sunbridge, right? It's about 7 minutes away. It is awesome. It's a big log cabin. Can't miss it. But there's other places you can get these. You can get them online. You can get them at other outdoor retailers. It'd be cool if you got it from us. But you can get it wherever you want. And you don't necessarily have to use these. You can make your own. If you have a dehydrator, that's a really cool way to make fresh backpacking meals like that. Yep. Anything else?
So you said the orange cord was paracord. And your
Yes.
gray thing there, is that a different type of cord?
Ooh, this, yeah. So these are straps for my hammock, right? So this is what I'm going to use to actually like run around the tree and string my hammock up. Mm-hmm. Yep. But yeah, always have multiple hanks of cordage because you can do so much with it when you're out there. Yeah, what's up?
A random question specific to my needs, but I'm thinking how nice it would be to sleep in a hammock. But I always bring my dog,
Gotcha.
so I always bring a tent because I have the dog. Do you know, like I guess I could just bring him like a little like sleeping bag or something, like a dog sleeping bag, and then still do a hammock. Do you know anything?
So I also bring my dog when I hammock camp. Every dog is different. My dog, I put her on a runner, right? So I string up like a paracord ridgeline, and I'll put her leash on that, right? And then I'll set her up like a little tarp shelter next to mine, right? So it's almost like a little dog house. So I'll put a tarp down, and I'll fold it in under itself, right? So she has shelter overhead, and then she has a little place to lie down. And then I'll stuff that. I have like a kind of older, like dog-friendly sleeping bag, like a synthetic bag that I'll put down in there for her that she can sleep in.
Cool.
That's what I do. They probably make dog tents, but I've never researched it. But yeah, that's like the lightest weight, most efficient option that I've found for my dog. My dog's huge. She's like 90 pounds, so she needs a bigger sleeping bag. That's awesome. Other questions?
Safety, like firearm, mace.
It depends on where I'm going, right? So if I'm going into bear country, like if I'm going out west and I know that there's going to be grizzly bears, I always carry bear spray and a sidearm. That's just my preference, If you don't want to carry a firearm, you do not have to carry a firearm, but you should carry bear spray 100% if you are in bear country. Around here, they're just black bears. You holler at them and they run away most of the time. Most of the time. But yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. You can use the little firecrackers. They're just, I don't know what they're called. That, and you light it real quick and you toss it. That's what they do out in Madison County.
Oh yeah.
It hurts and it just pops and the bears run. They do that out in Madison County.
Works good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they hate loud noises.
Yeah,
They
they
really do not like loud noises. But yeah, I generally don't carry a firearm on trails around here, but it's personal preference. Whatever you need to do to, feel safe. Other questions?
When you do carry either the bear spray or a firearm, where do you put it in your bag, or do you have?
So I don't carry it in the bag. I'll leave it on my person, right? Because like if you do walk off to use the restroom on the trail, and that's where the bear is, then you got to have it on you. I have a chest pack that I will carry my firearm in and my bear spray in. Yep. That way it just always stays on me, right? And the chest pack, it doesn't interfere with the harness of the backpack, right? That way I don't have to like be worried about having anything on my hips, right? It's just all on the chest. Yep. Anything else? We scared of the bears. It's viable, man.
Is there any type of, I'm sorry.
Hey, go for it.
Any type of, I know like off has D, but is there any tick spray or things that you all are spraying down in?
Yeah, I treat my clothing in permethrin. Permethrin I have found to be the most effective way to prevent tick bites 100%. DEET is awesome, but it is kind of rough on synthetic gear. It can cause your gear to degrade a little bit faster. It'll like break down the fibers in those synthetic gear. So the permethrin is awesome. So you actually treat your clothes in it. It's good for like 6 washes, so it stays in your clothes. So rather than having to apply it topically, you apply it on your clothes. On top of that, the best thing that you can do to prevent ticks is tuck in your shirt and like wear gaiters or tuck in your boots, right? Just seal off any entrances that ticks could get on your skin, right? Ticks are bad. We do not like them ticks, no way.
Is the permethrin, is it a spray?
Yeah, so it comes in a spray and it comes in a wash as well. I think the spray is a little bit easier to use. You just want to make sure that you don't use it around like pets or anything. It is like toxic, so make sure you're doing it outside, well ventilated, stuff like that, and you're letting it dry really well before you use it.
If you get it at a livestock store, like a farm store, Tractor Supply or whatever, it's a lot cheaper. You can get like a larger amount for less money if it's the same thing.
Okay.
It's true. That's what I do. That's the way. Good tip. Yeah, other questions before we talk about next stuff? All right. We talked a little bit about water purification. Does anybody have like more questions about water purification? Sweet. All right, cooking. Yeah, got into this a little bit. The big thing that we didn't hit on was the bear bag, right? So when I'm in bear country, out west especially, I like to practice something called the Bermuda Triangle, right? So the Bermuda Triangle, you want to have your cooking area, you want to have your bear bag, and you want to have your campsite 100 yards away from each other, kind of in a triangle, right? So that keeps everything spread out, keeps your scent distributed, and you want to make sure that you're camping upwind from where you're cooking and where you're storing your bear bag, right? Because when a bear comes up, if all of your scented items are in that bear bag, right, they're going to come up to the bear bag, right, and they're not necessarily going to make it up to you, right, because that wind is going to be what distributes the scent, right? Around here, it's not that much of an issue, right? Your biggest issue is going to be like raccoons and squirrels and stuff trying to get in your food, and I guarantee you the raccoons and stuff will definitely try to get into your food. I've had so much food stolen by raccoons. Yeah, what's up?
One time I spilled trail mix without knowing it, and I woke up because a raccoon touched my butt through the tap.
It's game changer,
It
right?
was so scary.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
I saw his hand right on my butt.
Yeah, they'll gnaw right through anything, man. They're
Or a
crazy.
tree, a squirrel, so yeah.
You bet.
Candy apple.
Anything. Yeah, all your items, so even like, cookware, your deodorant, your trash, your toothpaste, you want to put all of that in your bear bag, right? Anything that's going to have a really strong smell, right? And they're not necessarily interested in eating that stuff, but it's going to be a powerful foreign smell, and they're going to want to investigate it, right? So when you're hanging your bag, you want it to be at least 15 feet in the air and on a branch that's not like thick enough for a bear or a critter to crawl on, right? Because you really want them to get out on the limb, and the limb bends, and they feel scared, and they want to get off of it, right? So what I do when I hang that bear bag, I'll put all my food, cookware, anything stinky in my bag. I'll take my cordage, right? I'll tie like a sock. I'll put a rock in it, right? Tie it to the end of there, and I'll throw it up over a limb, right? Then I'll catch it, bring it down, and that's what I'll use to hoist the bear bag. Easiest way I've found to do it, y'all might find an easier way if you have some sort of like launching device or something. Use whatever you want, but that's what works for me.
Now, are you just calling it a bear bag, or is this like a specific bag?
Gotcha. I'm just calling this one a bear bag.
Okay.
They do make actual like bear-resistant bags and like bear canisters and buckets. Some places, like especially out west, they'll require you to have like a bear canister, but generally not around here. Yeah. The thing that I would recommend if you are like concerned about critters getting into your bag is they make these, it's almost like a wire mesh bag that's really hard for them to chew through. So that's something that would be worth investing in if you are really worried about stuff getting into your bag. Mm-hmm.
Are there certain features that you're looking for? Like this looks like it snaps and
This
you
one?
roll it down. And
I use this one because this is a hand-me-down from my family, and I have been using it for like my entire life. So this one is more sentimental than anything else. That's why I carry it. But I like it because it's it used to be waterproof. It's not waterproof anymore. I like to have a waterproof food bag just in case. This one has like a little swivel so I can let the air out of it. What I'm really looking for is like points of attachment so that I can actually hang it from the bear hang. I don't like hanging from the actual like snap closure itself. I prefer it to have some sort of other way to hang it, just because if you are putting stress on that snap closure, it can wear it and it could just drop if it gets too worn. So that's something that I always make sure to have on a bear hang bag, is some sort of like riveted snap. Other questions about bears? Cool. Bears generally won't mess with you around here. Sleeping in the backcountry. Sleeping is a big deal when you're backpacking, right? A bad night's sleep can really ruin your experience. If you wake up and you only got a couple hours of sleep, it's going to be really hard to get those miles in the next day for sure. So that's why campsite selection and having a good shelter system is so important. When you are selecting a campsite, there are 5 W's that I always consider, right? Wind, water, widowmakers, wigglers, and wood. If you are in an area with high winds, you definitely want to try to find a windbreak, right? Whether that is going to be like an arbor around some trees, whether that's going to be, around a hillside, somewhere where you're not getting in a lot of like turbulent winds. Water, you want to be close to water, but not right next to the water, right? Because you want to have access to drinking water. But if you get really, really close to the water, there's going to be a lot of bugs, insects, and then larger critters who are going to access that water as well. And you don't want to be in like a flood zone, anything like that. So if you are in like a canyon or in a really low spot, you might want to reevaluate where you're setting up your shelter. Wood is important as well. You need to have wood for a fire if that is something that you want to have. You don't necessarily need it, but you should also consider the widowmakers that are present in the woods, right? Widowmakers are going to be long branches, like dead branches or like overhanging trees, right? So if you set your campsite up underneath a widowmaker and some heavy wind comes in, then it could fall on top of you. And that is a bad deal. You do not want to get hit with a branch. So make sure whenever you are setting up, your campsite, that you're looking up. There's no hanging dead branches, anything like that. You want clear skies. And then wigglers. You don't want to be setting up on fire ants. You don't want to be setting up on snakes or like a bed of ticks, anything like that. So do your due diligence. Like really check out what's underneath you, what's beside you, so that you're setting up somewhere that's going to be safe and somewhere that you're going to be comfortable and have peace of mind, right? If you lay down and you're thinking like, I don't know, like this might not be the best place, trust your gut, man. Humans, our instincts are pretty good. So if you get the heebie-jeebies, just move, not that big. I always try to camp at designated campsites. Not every trail does have a designated campsite, but if you do go off trail, just make sure that you're minimizing your impact. Try not to mat down any foliage. Don't be cutting stuff down to clear way for your campsite. Let nature do its thing, and we can do our thing next to it. The big thing here in sleeping to get a comfortable night's sleep is thermoregulation and having comfy enough stuff. This would be an example of a winter setup, right? It's directly opposed to the summer setup. So she has 2 pads. She has a closed cell foam pad. She has an inflatable air pad. She's got a pillow even, and a true sleeping bag. And you can see she's in a tent, right? So she is doing as much as she can to thermoregulate, keep all of the airspace around her warmed, right? Because if you sleep just bare on the ground in a sleeping bag, you're going to compress that sleeping bag. All that insulation, all that loft, you're going to lose it when it gets smashed. That's no good. So you want to make sure that you have that insulation. Yep. Questions about kind of how that works, thermoregulation systems? Radical. All right, trail hygiene. This is another big deal, right? Staying clean on the trail. Nobody likes a dirty trail buddy. It's not fun. It's all pretty self-explanatory, I'd say the biggest thing on here is making sure you keep those small wounds clean, right? It's really easy to brush your leg through some briars, and get scratched up, You want to make sure that you're washing those, even if it is a little scrape on your finger, those are the things that can get infected. So if you do have any small open wounds, which are kind of inevitable, when you go outside, you want to make sure that you're cleaning them well, covering them, so you don't get infected. Keep your socks and your underwear dry, use a sleeping bag liner, and consider getting a trail bidet. Man, it's a game changer. It really is. It's awesome. But use whatever you want to keep yourself clean, right? When you are toileting in the woods, that's generally people's biggest fear or point of hesitation when they're backpacking, right? It's what am I going to do to go to the bathroom, right? It can be weird. So, make sure that you're at least, 100 feet away from the trail, 100 feet away from a waterway. A really good way that you can leave no trace when you are using the bathroom out in the woods is by, digging a cat hole, right? So you'll use a trowel to dig a cat hole, right? Make sure that you are, burying your excrement deep enough that nothing is going to dig it up so that nobody can see it. The rule of thumb is if you can look down and you can tell that somebody dug a cat hole, you probably need to dig a better cat hole, right? It's not fun finding stuff like that on the trail, you know what I mean? So that's a really good way that we can be considerate of other folks who are using the outdoors and just the environment itself, right? Just leaving no trace that way. Yep. Yeah.
Okay, the trail bidet is how you say it, is what I think it is. You can ask me later why you don't want to use it. And I think that's for a male thing. You can ask me later if you want to know. Okay, yeah.
You got her. Yeah.
So, weird question. Are we burying wipes here?
So,
Or are we packing those out?
it depends on what wipes you're using, right? If you are using wipes that have chemicals or additives, things that are not biodegradable, you do want to be packing those out, right? Some places, you can burn your toilet paper in your cat hole and then bury it. Some places, you'll be packing out your toilet paper. It all just depends on, what the local regulations are. I mostly bury my paper trash, and I will pack out any non-biodegradable wet wipes and things like that.
I was wondering about RV TP, if that would be better. That's supposed to break down quicker or something.
I don't know.
Anyway, I was just a thought.
Gotcha. And there's definitely techniques to using the restroom in the woods, right? I won't get into all of it today, but if you're nervous about it, you can do some research. That's what I'll say. Any questions about trail hygiene? Sweet. Last thing we're going to talk about is just general emergency preparedness. You know, this is something that's critical for everybody 100% before you get out in the woods, right? One of the most important things you can do is just have a plan, right? Have a really dedicated plan before you go out. Know exactly where you're going, really research the location, know kind of what the geological features are, what flora and fauna is going to be out there, how populated the trail is, if there's any trail closures, things like that. And know the route that you're going on. You know, if you have a general sense of where you're going, you know, you're going to be a lot more confident on the trail. And tell this exact plan to somebody that you really trust. You know, have a definite set time that you're going to get back. Assign a check-in time. You know, like say, hey, I'm going to call you at X time, and you know, if I do not call you, 2 hours after X time, like, come and get me, right? Yeah, send somebody to come and get me. You know, sweep the area, because the last thing you want to do is, be out, something disastrous happen, and then nobody know where you are, right? I generally tell, 2 other trusted individuals before I leave. I like redundancies, it's good to have. Definitely train with your navigation tools. We already talked about that. And just be comfortable with all your gear, especially, like first aid materials, how to set up your tent, or whatever shelter you're using, how to cook your food, practice with your stuff before you go out so you are, confident before you get out and really use it. I have done so much gear testing in my backyard, I'm not afraid of it. It doesn't make you less of an outdoorsman to like practice in your backyard. The biggest thing, maybe the most fun thing that you can do is, go on the trip with a friend. It's going to be infinitely safer. You might have more fun with somebody else, but that is a great way that you can make your trip safer, is by going with somebody that you trust. Maybe somebody who's more experienced than you, maybe somebody that can show you the ropes, or maybe you're the expert. Maybe you're dragging them out, man. That's cool too. It's really fun to learn together. But eventually, if you get confident enough, start going out on your own, that's when it's like really, really critical to let somebody know your plans for sure. Other than that, man, have fun. It's a great wide world. It's beautiful, and we should all enjoy it. So that's that. Any other questions? Sweet. Yeah, I appreciate you all so much for coming out. If you want to like stick around for a little bit, dig through the gear, ask me questions one-on-one, I'd be happy to stay around for a while and talk to you guys. If not, if you have more questions in the future, drop by the Pack Rat, come to our clinics, and we can dive a little bit deeper into some of this stuff. Yeah, we didn't have like all the time in the day to like really, really get in, but if you want to dive in, that'd be a great way to do it. But thanks, guys.
What was your name?
My name is Tyler. Yep. What was yours?
Amadia.
Madia. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I do have one question.
Yeah, sure.